Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. And let me say at the outset that I'm not a politician. I do not share any political idea of whatever. And I'm not here also to comment on the request to the waiver of the immunity of the Member of Parliament, Ilaria Salis, whom, by the way, I met for the first time at 4 minutes to 10 today. So, because I was looking at the clock. So 4 minutes to 10, I met her the first time. Nor I'm here to pass judgment in any way on the actions of which she is accused by the Hungarian authorities, let alone to justify them. I do not justify violence, whatever, if it was committed, I don't know. But, okay. I was asked to intervene here as a lawyer who in late 2023, it was November 2023, and Ilaria Salis was a nobody at that time, also in Italy. In late 2023, as Deputy Prosecutor General of Milan at that time, I had to deal with a case which is perfectly overlapping to the case of Ilaria Salis and others, especially in Germany. The case I'm referring to concerned an Italian citizen who was arrested in Italy in execution of a European arrest warrant issued by the Hungarian judicial authorities for the same conducts for which also Ilaria Salis is accused of. From the very, very first moment when I read the arrest warrant, the European arrest warrant, and although being a prosecutor, I submitted to the Court of Appeal a very firm request not, and I repeat, not to surrender the young man to the Hungarian authorities. And I motivated my request on the basis of basically of two arguments, which immediately seemed decisive to me. The first argument, and they're still decisive to me, the first argument was the disproportionality between the offences charged, which appeared me from the European arrest warrant, on the one side, and the punishment threatened on the other. The proportionality between conduct and punishment is a basic principle of criminal law. In Italy, probably, the conduct charged to the guy I'm speaking about him would amount to nearly nothing. The second argument I proposed to the Court of Appeal in asking not to surrender the person to the Hungarian authorities was the political, the legal, and the social development of Hungary from an EU member state once sharing common values regarding the protection of internationally recognized human rights and the independence of the judiciary, to a so-called illiberal democracy in which these common values have been and are being increasingly dismantled. The mutual trust, which is the basis of our common values, but especially regarding the judiciary, the mutual trust has come less. And that's why I asked not to surrender the person to the Hungarian authorities. These two arguments, as well as the failure of the Hungarian authorities to fully and satisfactorily answer the court's specific inquiries about the conditions of detention and fair trial guarantees, led the Milan Court of Appeal to adhere to my request, and thus to decide, after very thorough and detailed information review, to refuse to surrender the person concerned. But there was another decision coming later, at the beginning of this year, on 9 April this year. Also the Paris Court of Appeal, the Parisian Court of Appeal, refused to surrender another person who had been arrested in France on the basis of a Hungarian European arrest warrant for alleged crimes committed in the same context as the guy in Milan and as Ilaria Salis. The Parisian court recognized that in the event of a surrender, there is a risk that the rights guaranteed by Article 3 and 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights and Article 4, 47 and 48 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union will be violated. In other words, the court stated that there is a clear risk of an unfair trial, a trial conducted by a judiciary that is neither independent nor impartial, and the risk of the person, if surrendered, being subjected to inhuman and degrading treatment in detention. It is significant that both decisions, Milan and Paris, explicitly refer to several resolutions of various EU institutions, including the European Parliament, recognizing and condemning the constant undermining of the independence of the judiciary by Hungary, which decision makers should therefore be aware of and take into account, regardless of their political credo. Against the background of these undisputed and unquestionable facts and circumstances, it would be incomprehensible, at least to me, if the Parliament itself were to come to a decision that would clearly put a member of its institution at risk of being surrendered to Hungary, a member state that is widely and rightly labelled as an illiberal democracy, and where two member states' courts of appeal have already found that a fair and expeditious trial is not guaranteed, and that inhuman and degrading treatment is taking place. It should be clear that what is at stake in this parliamentary procedure is not the political position of the person concerned, nor the allegations against her, however serious they might be. At stake are higher principles and values such as the protection of fundamental human rights, towards which we are still and fortunately oriented, and human dignity, which must be recognized and guaranteed for all persons. At stake, if I may, and with all due respect, is also the very credibility of the institution. And I'm referring explicitly to the European Parliament regarding the consistency of its own decisions vis-à-vis the Hungarian political institutional involution from a state of law to, and I repeat, an illiberal democracy. In this regard, I cannot but mention and recall the dramatic detention conditions of Maya T. is facing in a Hungarian jail after having been handed over to Hungary by German authorities following, to say at least, a very borderline procedure. Furthermore, the fumus persecutionis against Ilaria Salis is clearly evident from recent statements by senior Hungarian politicians, as was stated just before. Let me conclude by saying that Article 8 and 9, he could choose, of the Italian Criminal Code provides for the possibility for an Italian citizen to be tried in Italy at the request of the Minister of Justice in the event of a political crime committed abroad or another crime which is sanctioned with a certain grade of imprisonment. The question is, why doesn't the Minister activate this possibility? So, what is at stake is not Ilaria Salis' destiny, nor her criminal responsibility, or even her political ideas, I do not agree with. What is at stake is the credibility of Europe, its institutions, and its fundamental values. Thank you.